Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just recalibrate my camera because it's still kind of in the same way that it was for side quest, which is not the biggest deal. But, I do like to have the camera angles a specific way per the way that I'm sitting. Like right now I'm sitting, but during side quests I like to stand because, I don't know, for whatever reason, when you're in character, it's a lot easier to think on your feet when you're on your feet, if that makes any sense. Probably not. I don't know. But yeah, it kind of gets like the noggin juices are flowing, and it makes it really easy to make all of the jokes that you possibly can and be super duper, I guess, pokey with your co-hosts. Of course, I'm still like that when I'm sitting down as well, but because you're in character, you're also maintaining character, remembering all these little factoids. Like, I'm periodically forgetting that Director Arctor is Arcturus on stream because they're so close to each other. And I've slipped up at least twice on stream while live. So it's easier just to say Arc instead of the full shebang. But yeah, even if you're in character, you slip up. Anyway, welcome to Cocktail Hour. I'm your host, Weebo Jones. We are a little bit late tonight. That is because I literally just got off the phone Discord chat with Polly. He is on his way home. He will be here within the next 5 to 10 minutes. So we will have a full co-host talking back and forth segment for you this evening. Never fear. But in the meantime, I get to entertain you with my pretty face and luscious locks and adorable personality. How are we doing this fine evening, ladies, gentlemen, lizard people, and variants thereupon? I apologize for the airport in the background, and not just the literal airport that's in the background, which you can't actually hear, but the plethora of fans. I love you, babe. If they become too much of a hijamawiggin, let me know, and I will do something about it. So we have Marcin Johnson in the chat. Reshow's in the chat. Gulf City Peterbilt Confederacy's in the chat. How you doing? How you doing? Isn't that a cooling fan? Yes, it is. There is a cooling fan here, and there's a cooling fan in the computer. Several, actually. How many?
3 or 4.
3 or 4. Because you need to cool down the computers when you're doing the gamings for like 6 hours straight. Right? Because otherwise the thing overheats and then it slows down, and you don't want that, because then it makes for a shitty gaming experience. You don't want that. Goodbye, my love. I love you! And now I have the room to myself. Guess what we can do? Literally anything, even when he's here. That's the joys of being in a relationship with someone who's not super controlling. Anyway. Tonight I am drinking Cayman Jack. Wow, I'm having a struggle. Cayman Jack Cuban Mojito. So basically it's a pre-mixed mojito. I've had this before on stream. I was actually drinking it on Friday for side quest, but I am drinking it now because I need to drink the rest of it before I can drink anything else. Oh, are those my babies? Are they getting along? Oh, boyfriendo is here. He is showing me pictures of our children. The cats. We haven't actually procreated yet. You struggling, babe? Aww.
They're near each other.
They're near each other, and one's not growling at the other, so that's an improvement. Granted, probably in a great deal of pain. Because we got Miaushwitz spayed on Friday. And so Valentine has had the run of the house while Miaushwitz has been segregated to the game room for the time being because of the fact that she is injured and we need to keep her as low activity as possible for the next 2 weeks while her stitches heal because she just had surgery. It's a big deal. All right, we need to be very careful with her because she's the baby. She's the baby. We love her. Marson Johnson, you plan to raise a litter? Not of cats. I think a boyfriendo is done with kittens for all of ever, for reasons that I will not go into. But we do plan to have kids at some point. That will be after we have moved into the house, after we have gotten married, after we've enjoyed married life for a bit. I think around, 26, 27-ish is when we'll start trying. So that's not for several more years. It's okay, ladies and gentlemen. You can wait to have kids, just not too long. Because, well, women go into menopause at some point. And the older that you get, the more health defects your children can potentially have. And while we'll still love them, it makes life a lot harder. Logistically speaking, it brings a whole bunch of semantics in that you didn't want to account for in the beginning. Where is Polly? He is on his way. He was literally just on the phone with me. Well, we started the call at 6:56. That was actually why I was late, because I was still on the call with him when 7 o'clock passed. He is still on his way home. He will be here momentarily. It's okay. Anyone surprised Polly's late? Not me. Give the man a break. He's a busy boy. A very busy bee. Where is the water jug? The water jug. The water jug. The water jug. It's probably with my sewing equipment, because that's where I left it. Because I spent a lot of the day writing the script for the video that I'm publishing on Tuesday. And yes, I'm committing to that. That I'm publishing on Tuesday. And I spent some time also sewing. Now, I have abandoned my jeans that I started like 2 years ago, because the whole project, I lost passion for it, and I lost the directions for it. Somewhere in the gigantic move, I lost the directions for making these pants, and so now I don't actually know how to finish them, so I'm just going to abandon that pair of pants until such time as I deem it right to continue the project. And that time will be determined by whether or not I can find the directions for it. But I did start working on the dress design. I have decided to go with half of a different pattern. So I'm keeping the top part of the bust that I think I showed you guys in the side quest request episode, if you guys follow the McGoggle Morse Cards live stream channel. And I could go get it, but then you'd be left with no one. I'll go get it later. But essentially, I'm keeping the top half, which essentially is a nice V-neck strappy number that comes up to about here on the wearer. And then it kind of tapers off in a nice little, I don't know what you call this. It's not a sash, but like the tummy piece. Oh God, the bodice front midriff. There we go, the midriff piece. And then the skirt is I stole the skirt design from a different pattern that essentially, it's not as formal. It's more flirty in nature, which would help because the dress is intended to be worn at a beach. And so I think it'll look better in that way. Now, it's very difficult to actually design a dress for a beach based off of what it is that I have, patterns and fabric wise, because I have the formal stuff, the super satiny and shiny shimmery materials. I don't have anything that I think would be appropriate for just the beach. But a beach wedding, I think the materials that I chose would make sense. So what I have is, I went to the Goodwill and I procured a great deal of old curtains, tablecloths, and just loose fabrics. And I managed to come out with some really shimmery, shiny satin blue fabric for the top piece. And then the bottom piece is going to be a combination of two different silvers. that I have. One of the silvers is actually a silver that I got for a wrap from a package that a boyfriendo got a while ago. But it was such a nice fabric. It was sheer, sparkly, and gray, and I liked it, so I kept it, knowing that I would probably use it for something down the road. But the other silver I got from Goodwill, and it's like straight up shiny silver fabric. So the actual skirt portion of the dress is going to be a combination of those two fabrics. The flurry portion, because it's got like side ruffles, are going to be the shimmery, sheer, sparkly fabric. And the main skirt part, the part that covers all the lady bits and such, the stuff that you don't want to show and tell, is going to be the solid, heavy satin fabric. So I'm hoping this works out. I don't know how it's going to work, though, because it's a combination of different fabrics and colors, and they're different weights, too. Plus, this will be the most ambitious creation that I will ever have gone and done. Granted, that's only because I don't have supervision. And when Weebo doesn't have supervision, things tend to go different ways. I'm a do-over kind of girl. I like having the window's open. I like having the ability to do things over, and in the crafting department regarding fabrics and sewing, that's not always the case because I have not all the fabric in the world. So, anyway, that's what it was that I was doing today. The other thing that I was doing today, like I said, was scripting a video that I will be producing over the next 2 days and putting out on the channel on Tuesday. Fingers crossed, because my current production stamina has not been what it was when I was in university. But I have most of the video scripted, and I have most of the graphics collected. All I really need to do is film it. It's a really simple video. It's harkening back to the old format. It borders on a Biggest Bigots video, honestly, in terms of style. And I think it's a really good thing for me to get back onto the saddle in terms of video editing and making. Because it's not like a monumental, gargantuan project. It's not like the hottest men of the comic book universes, because that was an undertaking and left me exhausted and thinking, oh, I can only do like 2 videos a week or 2 videos a month at this pace. But this one is feasible. This one I could do in a couple days. Not even. If I really buckled down on the hatches and got it done, I could get it done in like 4 hours. But of course, I don't have a consistent 4 hours to just dedicate to a thing, really. Life is hard as you get older. I'm realizing that very quickly. Like, the trials and tribulations of being an adult, they don't really hit you until after you graduate, until after you're working a 9 to 5, in my case, a 5:30 to 3:30. They don't hit you until you're responsible for living beings solely by yourself. They don't hit you until you're paying your own bills and you're maintaining your own existence. They don't hit you until you're paying insurance out of pocket. They don't hit you until you're buying food for yourself and trying to maintain a healthy living style and attempting to maintain a social life on top of all of the other things that you're doing, on top of trying to maintain just an enjoyment, a healthy enjoyment of life, and getting all of your extracurricular. Why do I still use that word? I'm not in school. And trying to maintain all of your extra stuff that you do, the hobbies, the things that you do because you enjoy them. I didn't realize becoming an adult would be this time consuming. And I find myself split in 7 million different directions. And this is in much a different way than I was when I was just going to college. Like, my attention has always been split in terms of focus for as long as I can remember. I don't remember a time when I was actually bored or lacking in something to do. honestly, which is both like great, but it's exhausting because the implication there is you always have something else to do. And it comes down to, well, do I want to give myself a break for 30 minutes and just kind of relax, or do I want to jump into the next thing so that it's no longer on my docket? It's a crapshoot, and I need to get better about giving myself permission to relax, because I don't think I do that very well. My boyfriend has told me this. My dad has informed me of this factoid, but I don't know. I didn't ever think that I would become a workaholic in any sense, but it just kind of accidentally transpired. Like, I had an entire conversation with a boyfriend last week about financial spending and the fact that I don't really spend money on myself for fun. Like, I have ulterior motives whenever I spend money. Like, even when I was buying this computer was not intended for me to enjoy it solely. It was intended for me to use it to produce content, to produce anything. This is art, this is videos, this is business shenanigans. That's why I could justify writing it off as a business expense on my taxes. But yeah, I don't do a good job about relaxing. Marson Johnson, permission. Does working make you happy, though? It does. It does. I like to be busy, but I do have a tendency to overwhelm myself. I overestimate my abilities and underestimate the time constraints that I work within. For instance, we had friends of the family, friends of myself and a boyfriend who come over yesterday, his second mother, and we had them for dinner. And this was something that I knew in advance. I told them 5 o'clock, be here. They were going to bring dessert. I was going to make nice food. We were going to spend a couple hours entertaining, and then they would go home, and that's fine. And I, like 2 hours ahead of time, started getting ready and started making food, and it's 4:30 and I'm in the middle of making dinner. I'm still in my pajamas because, of course, I don't like to cook with red meat in my nice clothes, so I hadn't put on my nice clothes yet. I was going to wait until like 10 minutes till 5 to put on my nice clothes. I hadn't put my face on. I hadn't even done anything with the makeup, and not that I need to necessarily, but I like to put in the effort to look nicer. Like, I didn't even need to do this with my face for you guys, but I like to, is the thing. But they showed up at 4:30. They called me. They're like, "We're here," and I go, "Oh shit!" And I couldn't even default to a boyfriend no and go, "You answer the door. You entertain them for the next like 15 minutes while I finish getting ready." No. He was gone. I'd sent him to the store to get milk for the brownies because it makes sense to have milk with brownies. Except no one drank that milk. So now I have half a gallon of milk at the house. I don't want to drink it. Anyway, so they show up at 4:30 and I'm like, I'm not ready yet. I'm still in the middle of cooking and I can't entertain simultaneously as I am cooking, as I am getting ready. Hi, Polly.
Hello.
Talking about how horrible growing up is.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Regaling them with a tale of yesterday, and my dinner guests that showed up a half an hour before I told them to show up.
Bastards.
Actually, yes. Let me tell you why.
All right.
I tell you to show up at 5 o'clock. Show up at 5 o'clock. Not a half an hour before the fact, because I'm not ready then. All right? I tell you, 5 o'clock is the time you're supposed to show up. If you show up at 4:30, I'm not going to be ready for you. All right? I was in the middle of making dinner. I was in my pajamas, like booty shorts and a crop top, making food. My face was not on my face. It was not a good look, Polly. And they go, and they press the buzzer and they're like, this doesn't fucking work because our buzzer doesn't work. And they call me and I'm like, oh, hello. And they go, we're here. And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. Give me 1 minute, please. So yeah, I know they say that on time is late. No, something about being early is on time is late, and if you're late, just don't even bother. But like, half an hour early is a bit much. Holly, thoughts? This isn't me trying to be like pointedly like, oh, Polly showed up late today. No, that was what we were talking about before you showed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you were complaining about people being early. Showing up late. It's like, it's fine. That's giving you extra time to find your face wherever it was hiding and put it on your face.
Well, yes. I don't know. Just like a half an hour is a bit much in terms of earliness. And,
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just...
Like, they were the only people that we were entertaining. Just this couple and myself and El Boyfriendo. It was dinner for 4. I was making dinner. It makes sense not to show up 30 minutes early, right?
Sure does.
I don't know. I don't know what the etiquette for entertaining is yet. I'm still new to this. But it flustered me, is the point. That's the point that I was getting at, is that, like, even when you plan for shit goes wrong, and then you bite off more than you can chew, and I get overwhelmed by that kind of shenanigans very easily. Like, if things don't go my way in that sense, or if they don't go the way that I expect them to in that sense, I'm going to be like, rebooting. I am a computer in that sense. Like, I will freeze up. There will be an error message on the screen. Shit will not be happy. And I will have to shut down and restart. Like, ooh, hello. Reprocessing. What's going on?
Huh.
That is like the most autistic thing about me, is that I have trouble being flexible like that. Like, I can be flexible over time, but you gotta give me a warning, heads up. Otherwise, I get flustered very easily. That's the summation of this statement. Anyway, Polly, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
How are you, other than your frustrations?
My frustrations.
Is that a word? I'm gonna go with it. It is.
I think it is. Yeah. Let's go with that. I'm fantastic. I watched the Snyder Cut, and I'm so happy that I did. And I know I invited you to that, and you were like, no, I don't want to.
I got it way after the fact. That would have been fun, but unfortunately, I was not home to see said message.
It's okay. That's your homework for this week, though, is to watch the Snyder Cut, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, I'm down for some more Batfleck.
Oh, dude, Batfleck is such a small percentage of the 4-hour extravaganza that is the Snyder Cut. It's 4 hours, Polly. 4 hours.
Okay, well, you just knocked the leg out from under the table of me wanting to watch that. Shit,
No, it's worth your while.
But it's got lots of extra Jason Mimosa. Oh, well, shit, sign me up for the things.
Trust me, it's worth the 4 hours.
4 hours.
Trust. Like, cool. Okay, the Titanic was, what, 3.5 hours?
Never saw it.
Yes. Very, well, I haven't seen the whole thing either, but what I've understood, it's way too long for what it is that it is. It didn't need to be that long. The Snyder Cut needed to be that long for you to get everything. But you can, okay, here's the thing. You can split it up into viewings. So there are like 5 different sections, and you can just take it in bite-sized chunks. So you don't have to watch all the way through the first night. But, you know, given the fact that you are currently in the middle of the 50-part Christian documentary, I would say the Snyder Cut wouldn't be that big a deal for you.
Chris Chan, not Christian.
Sorry.
Well, I mean,
I
okay, you want to get
forgot
technical.
the little pause.
Well, yeah. Then, you know, actually, you're not wrong because he did change his name to Christian Weston Chandler, so it is a Christian documentary, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Heard it is a slow-mo marathon. Daniel Coleman says there are moments of slow motion. It's a Snyder film, so you get what you get.
Right? Yeah, he loves his slow-mo. That's for sure.
But you know, like. You accept different stylistic quirks in all of your content creators, don't we? I mean, I have my own quirks when it comes to content creation. Probably not ones that everyone is enjoyable with. How would I phrase that? Probably not ones that people enjoy all of that much.
Receive enjoyment from?
There we go. Yeah, see, my trouble with the English language is probably something that gets on people's nerves sometimes.
No, it's
or
endearing.
They find it charming and adorable.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mixed bag, really. It's a crapshoot what my audience enjoys. Like, I had a person in my comments, Polly, that's like,
Did you just call it a crab shoot?
Crap shoot.
Could have sworn you said crab shoot.
No.
And I didn't say anything right away because people talk about shooting fish in a barrel when if you think about it, it'd be easier shooting crab in a barrel. Okay, anyway, you got to remember your audience do what?
It's my fast.
Although why you would want to shoot fish or a crab, I don't know. Anyway, go on.
Anyway, I had an audience member who yelled at me in the chat because he's like, your non-animated content so much better than your animated content. I'm like, okay, cool, bye. Like, I get that people prefer different stuff.
Animated, like
the stuff that I use with the avatar.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. All right, just clarifying. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I get it. All right, you have opinions. I don't care. No, I'm just kidding. I do care, but that's like one of those things that the situation doesn't necessitate that you actually say that out loud. In my opinion. Because I do make in-person and I do make the avatar content. It's a mixed bag.
Well, that's just like my 9-word summation for a good 20% of what I read in comment sections. That doesn't necessitate that you're not wrong.
Was it necessary? No. And then I have the comments, and I'm directly calling out like one of my most reliable commenters here. It just goes, "Hi, Weebo," and that's it. Hi, Miss Jones.
That's nice.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But also, I want to know more. All right, say more than just hi to me. You want to have a conversation? We'll have a conversation. Let's have a talk.
You know, well, okay.
Like you're here.
I hear what you're saying. It's like you're here, you've got a keyboard in front of you, you started to type, maybe say something that you liked other than hi Weebo. I hear you. But, you know, have you ever been over to my comment section on my channel? I would appreciate a hi Polly as compared to, motherfucker, you know what the fuck, what the fuck? You son of a bitch.
No, but I actually think I would prefer the controversial comments from people because then it gives me something to laugh at and meme about. I like it when people disagree with me. Sue me. I like that lively debate. I get a kind of adrenaline rush from people who hate me. Like, I understand Milo Yiannopoulos' like need to provoke the internet with his shenanigans. I understand the high that comes with that because it just, I don't know, there's a certain rush when you're like, I made people react like that. Ooh. And on some level, any attention, of course, is like, oh, yay, a good time. Now, of course, I don't take it to the logical extreme that is, and I don't go full cash me outside, how about that, girl, with the attention, negative or otherwise, but it, to a degree, a controlled level of negative attention can be exciting. And that's the honest truth.
Fuck you, Jedi Ghost Bear. It ain't even funny.
Zakon. I get tagged in some of those posts every once in a while in the Twitterverse.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. That came full circle, didn't it? Talk about somebody that thrives off of negative attention. Deliberately saying, I mean, that man's not a Poe. That man's my read is that he's conscientiously doing it. I mean, he talks about things that are so far outside anything that he knows and then tries connecting it back to, it'd be like, I'm a computer programmer, so of course I know you made that cake recipe wrong. Like, that's the level Zach Hunt operates on.
That's,
not
how that works.
I wrote a book on end times theology, so let me tell you about critical race theory now.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what?
I am expert in A, therefore I must be expert in B through Z.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the greatest. Oof. When one person thinks that they know everything. That's why I like to go by Jack of all trades, master of none. Like, I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I don't know everything about any one thing. Even the thing that I got my degree in, computer science and psychology, I can always learn more. I am not the most intelligent person in that field. Jesus, no. God, no. Fuck no. There is a sort of hubris, though, with people online that people are permitted to have. Not like I'm saying like it's right that they have it, but the internet debate culture allows for a certain level of hubris in people because, like, while you're in the middle of a Twitter thread yelling at somebody because they have the wrong opinions about what woke culture is and isn't, you can pull all of these factoids out of your ass in the 20 minutes that it takes for you to respond to that person in like a 3-part Twitter thread. And of course, they're only going to respond to part 1 of the Twitter thread with their very specifically selected context, historical information that supports their arguments as well. And it's just a completely vicious cycle of exactly that behavior. It's kind of entertaining. Because you know how exactly it's going to go. And you know exactly what that person is spending the 5 minutes it takes to craft the most perfect tweet doing. They're not actually typing individual letters into their phone trying to respond to you for that 5 minutes. No. They're on Google. They're on DuckDuckGo. They're on Wikipedia. They're on some crap hole was Kang's website in the middle of who knows where the fuck on the internet, looking up the most obscure referential historical data that they can possibly use to support claim X in order to refute your claim B. And I love it. I love everything about it. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now. I have articles.
I have exactly one.
Do you? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's start with yours. Go ahead.
Okay. So speaking of being an expert of nothing and the logical conclusion of where that might be a problem, let's talk about 7 accidents and disasters in spaceflight history. So this article spawned from a conversation that we had earlier, Polly, when I was looking up coding incidences that had very expensive conclusions, either in terms of like life, mortality, shenanigans, or costliness. So close quarters vehicles faster than the speed of sound, zero gravity, and extremely volatile rockets. Do any of these things sound particularly prone to accidents? Space travel is tricky work that takes careful calculations and even more careful actions when situations get tough. Here's a list of 7 accidents and disasters that have occurred during space expeditions. I don't know. I just thought it would be an interesting conversation to talk about what can go wrong, and to remind everyone in the coming months when you're on your vacations, if you happen to be going on them, that things can go wrong.
Okay.
No pressure. Okay,
All right.
so
Hold on, I'm going to embiggenate my screen here. Let me
you're
just,
gonna embiggenate.
all right, there.
Is that a word?
Accomplished.
Embiggenate.
Well, embiggen is, so I figure why not aid it?
Oh, Holly.
What?
I'm so proud. You're making up words. I've taught you so much. So the
Okay.
I take full responsibility for this character trait development here. All right, the fact that this is
You know what?
happening.
I've seen lots of pictures of the International Space Station. It must have extra wide extendable solar panels because I don't ever think I've seen them that wide. That it's surprising.
Well, solar energy, to my knowledge, is not the most efficient ways of generating energy. But of course, what else are you going to do up in the middle of?
I was supposed to say, but you're up there though.
Yeah,
It's what else are you gonna do?
Well, okay, so part of it has to do with the fact that there are environmental factors on the Earth that make it not as efficient. But because that's not a factor in space, the thing that I'm thinking of is with the ability to actually store that energy, because the space station the space station is not always going to be on the same side of the Earth as the sun is, so it's got to be able to store some of that energy, or to store as much of that solar energy as it can while it's on that side, right? Otherwise, it's going to have some issues. But from what I understand about solar energy storage, and I'm not an expert, guys, it's not as reliable to store solar energy. I don't know the science behind it, but for whatever reason, you can't store as much of it, I guess, as you would in like a normal battery with normal other energy. Maybe something. I'll look it up after we're done looking at this, because now I'm curious. I read something about it 5 years ago when I took AP Environmental Science, and now I can't remember anything except for a vague inclination that there is a problem with solar energy. But that was 5 years ago now. Wow, I'm old. All right, so the ISS Expedition 36 water leak in an astronaut suit. Oof. Luca Parmitano, an Italian astronaut with the European Space Agency, took on a bit of water as he was working outside of the International Space Station on July 16th, 2013, during a spacewalk on the 36th expedition. In the ISS, Parmitano's helmet began to unexpectedly fill with liquid, and being in space, the water was free to float around his entire head, eventually making it impossible for him to hear or speak to the other astronauts. Though it might seem like the solution to Parmitano's problem is obvious, alas, the water was not from a drinking bag, but from a leak in the liquid coolant system, and would not have been the safest thing to drink. Plus, imagine drinking water that is floating freely in the air. Doesn't seem easy. That would be complicated, because you're in the helmet. The only thing that you can do is move your head, and the water is just kind of floating on its own whim. So unless you can redirect it somehow using your suit, kind of fucked. The spacewalk continued for over an hour before he was back in the ISS and free from his wetsuit, completely unharmed but in need of a fresh towel, which he received promptly. The accident and subsequent cancellation of the spacewalk made it the second shortest spacewalk in the station's history. Rough. So imagine how freaky that would be if your suit just started filling up with water.
Yes. Not good.
No. God, no. I think I've actually seen that in a space horror film before. I don't know. That just freaks me out a little bit, because it reminds me of other spacey horror films that I've seen, like where the astronauts take off their helmet and their faces freeze, or uh, that one alien movie, not the alien movie, but like that one alien movie where the creature actually is inside the suit or got inside the suit and he's like in the guy's helmet. You can actually see it on the screen. It's just freaky as fuck. No, because you can't even take it off to get the thing.
Right.
You have to just sit there and deal with it or die. You have exactly 2 options. None of them are good. So the STS-51L Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster that occurred on January 28th, 1986 marked one of the most devastating days in the history of space exploration. Just over a minute after the space shuttle lifted off, manufacturing in the spacecraft's O-rings, rubber seals that separated its rocket boosters, caused a fire to start that destabilized the boosters and spread up the rocket itself. The shuttle was moving faster than the speed of sound and quickly began to break apart. The disaster led to the deaths of all astronauts on board, including civilian Christina McAuliffe, a participant in NASA's Teacher in Space project, who was to teach classes and perform experiments while in space. The extended mission of the shuttles included deployment of satellites and the test of tools for studying astronomy and Halley's Comet. The shuttle's launch was not widely televised, but the explosion and breakup of the shuttle was visible to spectators on the ground. The launch itself was performed in 26 degrees Fahrenheit, -3 degrees Celsius weather, was predicted to encounter issues by members of the engineering team who knew of the dangers posed to O-rings by such low temperatures. Despite vocalizing these concerns, the mission continued as planned because NASA was against delaying the shuttle launch anymore, as it had already been delayed multiple times. The disaster resulted in the temporary suspension of the space shuttle program and created the Rogers Commission to determine the cause and fault of the disaster. So, long story short, listen to your damn engineers, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That could have been avoided. All right, they're like, oh, we would be. We don't want to delay another launch. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and do the thing despite your completely valid safety concerns. We're just going to launch anyway because we don't want to delay once more. No, that would be ridiculous. Why would we do that? If they had delayed, no one would have died.
You see that? You know them O-rings we put on the giant solid rocket boosters that are just like, tons and tons of explosives? Yeah, they suck at a 20-degree temperature variation. And it's kind of cold right now. It's a little chilly.
It's a little bit chilly.
Now, I realize that we're launching this thing into space where it's even colder than that. But right here on the ground is when it counts. And that's all I have to offer. It kind of sucks. Well, I'm surprised that O-rings, any material that they would use, would be subject to that kind of influence with that small of a temperature variance. But guess so.
Yeah, apparently the CCP watched the Challenger blow up in school. The teacher's panties got in a twist, and they hustled over the TV to shut it off. Yeah, wow, Oof, that's worse than the time that a science class lit gummy bears on fire during class and sent most of the school outside of the school for a fire drill. True story. Not as interesting. But I digress. Apollo 12, lightning strikes and a head scrape. I've not heard this one. The second manned lunar expedition of feat astronaut Charles Conrad called a small step for Neil Armstrong, but a long one for me, was not without a few mishaps. As Apollo 12 was beginning to lift off on November 14th, 1969, the top of the space shuttle was hit by 2 different lightning strikes that had the potential to compromise the spacecraft and the mission. The first strike was even visible to the spectating audience, creating a stir and concern about the safety of the mission. But despite the scare, it was determined in a quick check of all the spacecraft systems that no damage was done to the vehicle, and it set off to the moon just as planned. It was the return to Earth that caused a little more trouble. As the spacecraft splashed down in the ocean during its return to Earth, a strong wave hit the body of the craft, causing it to jolt and swing from its parachutes. This force toppled a 16mm film camera from where it was secured into astronaut Alan Bean's head, causing a 1-inch cut. Bean turned out A-okay, though, as Conrad quickly served as medic and bandaged the wound. See, that immediately after the Challenger disaster, I don't know, it feels like they ran out of steam very quickly.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, I thought the camera broke loose and his skull was shattered. Like it just gave him.
No, he just got a cut. He had tis but a flesh wound, Polly. Don't you know? Those are serious because they bleed a lot.
And they're subject to infection.
Yes, very important, especially when you've been contained in a basically tin can in space, isolated from anything that isn't your crewmate for however many days you were in space for. And then don't when astronauts come out of space, don't they get subject to another quarantine?
Probably. They might have the Andromeda strain or something.
Yeah. I hope.
You ever seen that movie?
No.
It's a movie.
But I would assume that the Andromeda strain is like a deadly disease that kills all life on Earth because it's a space bug.
Space people, they get a disease. Drama ensues. Woo! That's the movie.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Soyuz 1 parachute failure.
No, you got it right. Soyuz. Yeah.
Soyuz? Okay.
Yeah.
Vladimir.
Jesus. You see that glowing button on the front of your blue Yeti, Weebo? That's, if you press it.
Feel called out?
I feel a little called out here.
I don't appreciate this.
Okay, go ahead. You were saying something between mucus expulsions.
No, I did that. That was a little bit more animated than I normally would do that. I did that for the meme of it, for the people, for the clips that Lion Patriot's gonna get of me and put in the Discord later. Okay, Vladimir Komarov was one of Soviet Russia's first group of cosmonauts. Okay, pause. I know that in Russia they use the word cosmonaut as opposed to astronaut. I don't know how I feel about cosmonauts, but Polly, what is your thoughts, aside from the obvious, apparently, on the cosmonaut versus astronaut debate? Do you have thoughts?
Well, we're headed to the Astros. No, we're headed to the Cosmos.
We're headed to the Spaceos. I think we should call them Spaceonauts.
It should have been Spaceonauts. Yeah, there you go. Where was the common ground? Why wasn't it reached?
I like Spaceonauts a lot more than I'd like any of the other options that we have on the table. And we're just going to leave it at that. I'm right. Everyone else is wrong. First group of cosmonauts selected to attempt space travel. He was also the first person to enter outer space twice, though his second time would sadly be his last. During the expedition of Soyuz 1, the Soviets' first space vehicle intended to eventually reach the moon. Komarov encountered issues with the design of his spacecraft that led to his death. Oof. The mission plan for Soyuz was a difficult one. The spacecraft was to orbit Earth and then have a rendezvous with Soyuz 2. The two vehicles would have precisely matched their orbital velocities to test the first step in docking two spacecrafts together. After Komarov was in orbit around Earth and it was time for Soyuz 2 to launch and meet him, problems with the spacecraft that had been largely ignored became apparent. Ooh, see, this is why you don't ignore your engineers, ladies and gentlemen. And the Soyuz 2 mission was halted. The mission control was able to determine that one of the solar panels on Soyuz 1 had not deployed and was limiting the power of the spacecraft dramatically. Equipment that needed the power from this solar panel was malfunctioning, creating difficulties in controlling the vehicle. It was decided that the mission could not continue, with Komarov being and Komarov began preparing for his return to Earth. After some trouble breaching the atmosphere, this parachute on Soyuz 1 was deployed but did not unfold correctly, making the spacecraft impossible to slow down. Soyuz 1 crashed into Earth on April 24, 1967, killing cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov. Komarov was the first fatality in spaceflight, and since his death has been honored with memorials and monuments near the site of the crash and in Russia for his bravery and skill. Oof. And see, I think that is the primary reason why I wouldn't want to skydive.
Or get on a Russian spacecraft.
Too, yeah.
Or a Chinese one, or a Pakistani one.
Mm-hmm. American made all the way.
Yeah, any country where like they build things with the attitude of, okay, yeah, but that's not exactly safe. Yeah, well, there's plenty more where they came from. You know, that's Russia, that's China, that's
we have so many more people to take their place when they die. If they die. Sorry, my bad. Slip of the tongue.
Shady went to my channel and found the very first video I uploaded and typed "Hi Polly" in the comments.
I love the audience.
I appreciate
Thank you, audience.
Did that. That was nice.
Yeah. Aw. Does it make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, Polly?
It did. It did.
Aw. Good. All right. Are you ready for Murray Teen exercise equipment to the eye? Ooh. This sounds a lot like one of those head wound issues. Like, okay, we have death and destruction, mayhem, and then
exercise equipment to the eye,
and then death, destruction, and mayhem, and then more tiny head wounds.
Are we talking about one of them stretchy bands that people attach to a door? Or are we talking about an entire weight set? Like, what hits you?
Yeah, but like, here's the thing. It's in space. Need I say more?
It was probably a stretchy band.
How do you exercise in space is my question.
With stretchy bands, you need resistance stuff as opposed to gravity focused stuff.
That's fair.
You ever seen them treadmills that they use? They actually have stretchy bands on belts that hold them down to the surface of the treadmill.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because you suffer big time muscle atrophy when you're floating around in space because there's no weight on you.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, yeah.
Space explorers need to stay in good physical health during their time in outer space. Because of this necessity, space stations have exercise equipment that astronauts or cosmonauts can use to stay fit. Or spaceonauts. During a mission in the Mir space station in 1995, astronaut Norman Thalgard was attempting to do just that with a piece of exercise equipment for performing deep knee bends. The equipment used a strap of elastic that is secured to a foot in order to create resistance. While Thalgard was exercising, one of the straps snapped off of his foot and flew upward, hitting him in the eye. How, though? Like, there's no space. It's space, all right? And so, even if it did snap and lose his footing, would it travel that fast to his face? I guess we'll just have to go to space and test it out, Polly, because now I'm curious.
Well, just because you see things floating slow in like video footage of his space doesn't mean like if we were both on a space station and I whipped a fastball at you, it wouldn't like still travel just fast. Physics says it would.
I got a C in physics, so I'm not the greatest expert on this subject.
I remember when I signed up for senior level physics. I remember all of physics, and I'm like, this is fucking math. This is math with a bad label on it.
Yeah.
Like, I thought this was. Anyway.
What's the difference between this and the other math classes that I'm taking? Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, and it's not even applied mathematics. People say that it is, but it's not really. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you were saying?
After being prescribed, after the initial shock of the injury, Thalgard was in pain and had trouble looking at light, something hard to avoid in outer space. After being prescribed steroid eye drops, which apparently the space station had readily available, they just have a pharmacy up there, I guess. Thalgard's eye began to heal, and all was back to normal. Oh, good for him. I'm so glad that his eye was okay. But in the meantime, this cosmonaut, Vladimir, was dead. So, oh, another disaster. Let's see if people died on this one, Polly.
Well, yeah, they did. The whole thing shattered in, oh, spoilers.
Hey, I don't know anything about space history.
You don't know about this? Yeah, shattered in the atmosphere. They're like, hello, Columbia, come in, Columbia. And Columbia didn't come in. And yeah, parts of it were found throughout cornfields.
Oh, all right. I think I like that, like, description of events a lot better than I'm gonna like this one. We'll see. We'll see. Like, come in, Columbia, and Columbia did not come in.
Well, it was actually literally coming in. It was on its
Columbia came in, but not in the way that they expected.
Yeah, exactly. It came in far more pieces than they sent it up in.
Holly, people died, damn it.
Yeah, I know. We're looking at their ghostly images right now. I know it's just, what, too soon?
No, it's not. It's never too soon. It's too soon if it's like 5 seconds before the actual thing, because then it counts as a jinx. You see how the logic works?
They said there was loose fitting thermal tiles on the bottom of the craft, and it was coming in, doing its re-entry into the atmosphere, and then, heat, more heat, and poof.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
When I read this. The disintegration, bad way to go out, of the Space Shuttle Columbia on February 1st of 2003. Oh, I was but a wee child then. As it re-entered the atmosphere was another of the most traumatic accidents in the history of space expedition. The Columbia disaster was the second that occurred during NASA's Space Shuttle program, after the Challenger, also causing widespread sadness and concerns about the space programs. The accident was caused during liftoff by the breaking off of a piece of foam that was intended to be absorbed and insulate the fuel tank of the shuttle from heat and to stop ice from forming. The large piece of foam fell on the shuttle's left wing and created a hole. Though NASA officials were aware of the damage, another one. The severity of it was unclear because of the low-quality cameras used to observe the shuttle's launch. See, this is why half-assing it at work doesn't fly, all right? If you have even an inkling of a suspicion when it comes to, like, I don't know, space flights of this magnitude, check it out. But that's just my non-expert opinion on the subject matter. I know that if I were an astronaut working on this space shuttle, I would prefer if we favored caution over expedience, but, I'm not. Thank God, because I'd be dead. Anyway. Knowing that the foam regularly had fallen off of previous shuttles and had not caused critical damage, NASA officials believed there was nothing to worry about. But when the Columbia attempted re-entry after its mission was complete, gas and smoke entered the left wing through the hole and caused the wing to break off, leading to the disintegration of the rest of the space shuttle 7 minutes from landing. The entire crew of 6 American astronauts and the first Israeli astronaut in space died in the accident. NASA's space shuttle program was again suspended after this disaster. Despite the tragedy, an experiment performed during the expedition that studied the effects of weightlessness on the physiology of worms was recovered from the wreckage. The worms left in a petri dish were still alive, a symbol of the dedication of the Columbia crew and monument to their efforts. So what have we learned today, ladies and gentlemen? Holly, this one's for you too, if you wanna. If you wanna pose a learning experience that we had today.
Worms are tough.
So NASA never fucking learns. Look at this. Apollo Soyuz test project poisonous gas leak. Have you heard of this one, Polly? Are you going to spoil it for me?
No.
You haven't heard of this, or you're not going to?
No, I haven't heard of this, no.
Oh, okay. Then we're both going to learn something today. The Apollo Soyuz test project in July of 1975 was a feat of both space travel and politics. It was the first joint U.S. and Soviet space flight and marked the end of the space race between the two countries. Here is where spaceonauts came into play. Just so we all are clear. This is where that would be necessary. Bottle up. all of the tension between these two superpowers, and there's bound to be some mishap. Surprisingly, the mission itself went over almost flawlessly until their returns. The two spacecraft, the American holding 3 astronauts and the Soviet 2 cosmonauts, met in orbit around the Earth and docked to each other, allowing the space explorers to travel between the vehicles. They exchanged pleasantries and gifts and executed some experiments, each group speaking in the other's native language, to smooth communication and blur the barriers between the two countries. After 44 hours, they parted, and after a few more days, the two spacecrafts began their descents to Earth. It was during re-entry that a malfunction with the RCS, the reactor control system that controls altitude, caused poisonous nitrous tetroxide to enter the cabin where the American Apollo astronauts were seated. Luckily, the cabin was ventilated once the spacecraft landed, and none of the astronauts were fatally injured. They were rushed to a hospital and were found to have developed a form of chemically caused pneumonia, but all recovered within a few weeks. Okay, so we got a few things going on here, right? So we have the water leak issue, which, though freaky, a nothing burger. Let's be honest. We have the absolute Challenger disaster with the explodiness of a space shuttle, the head scrape. A parachute failure, which resulted in one person's death. The exercise equipment to the eye, its incident. Another disaster resulting in lots of disintegration. And then poisonous gas. So, in terms of, I don't know, issues, some of these don't equate to the others, is just all I'm getting at here.
Fair enough.
Like, this whole article was just a roller coaster of problems. Like, oh, this one's super big. This one, not so much. This one, oh my god, so many people died. But this one is just like not a big deal. And then this one, oh my fucking god. And this one is is a little bit scary, a little bit sketchy, but not. Eventually, just everything was all good. Water leaking is not a nothing burger. Okay, I wasn't actually meaning that was a nothing burger. The exercise equipment to the eye was kind of a nothing burger, but I digress. Yeah, space is hard. Didn't they have to develop a completely different way of writing? Like, there is a very specifically engineered pen just for space, because for whatever reason, writing with a normal pen in space just wasn't going to work. Am I remembering that incorrectly? The pen designed for space. Is it a pen? Is it a pencil? The world may never know. Yeah, there is a pen specifically designed for space. Yeah, NASA spent millions to develop a pen that would write in space, whereas the Soviet cosmonauts used a pencil. It's a fact or fiction. I thought it was real. Yeah, apparently. What? Well, Polly, I have another article that I want to read now. Even though I know you have articles, but
no, let's do it. I want to hear.
Now that we brought this up, all right, let's talk about the pens. Fact or fiction? NASA spent millions to develop a pen that would write in space, whereas Soviet cosmonauts used a pencil. The problem of weightless writing was not solved by either Soviet central planning or good old American subcontracting, but by a private investor and a good idea. So during the height of the space race in the 1960s, legend has it that NASA scientists realized that pens could not function in space. I wonder how they realized that. Like, did they actually have to go to space to actually figure that out, or was that just some idea that someone had on Earth? They're like, well, there's no reason. Wait a second. These wouldn't work in space. Like, the first astronauts we sent up there just realized all of a sudden, they're like, all right, so now I'm just going to record all this data. Fuck. Why is this pen not working? What's going on here? I can't fucking write. Okay, let me try a different one. And all of that data just nixed. He's going to have to memorize all of the different data points that he needs for when he comes back down. Oh. Sorry, that just amuses me greatly. So they needed to figure out another way for astronauts to write things down, so they spent years and millions of taxpayer dollars to develop a pen that could put ink to paper without gravity. But their crafty Soviet counterparts, so the story goes, simply handed their cosmonauts pencils. Now that would be super amusing if that were how it went. But apparently the size of this article specifies otherwise. I guess. The tale with its message of simplicity and thrift, not to mention a failure of common sense and bureaucracy, floats around the internet, hopping from inbox to inbox and even surfacing during a 2002 episode of West Wing. But alas, it's just a myth. Okay, apparently. Let's find out why. Originally, NASA astronauts, like the Soviet cosmonauts, used pencils, according to NASA historians. In fact, NASA ordered 34 mechanical pencils from Houston's Tycam Engineering Manufacturing, Inc. in 1965. They paid $4,382.50 or $128.89 per pencil. When these prices became public, there was an outcry and NASA scrambled to find something cheaper for the astronauts to use. Pause. Why couldn't we just use any old goddamn mechanical pencil, Polly?
Yeah, yeah.
Like even not even a mechanical pencil, just a regular old-fashioned like golf pencil would have worked. Right?
One would think.
Unless I'm missing something here. I mean, I know I got a C in physics, but I'm not missing anything, right? Right? Pencils may not have been the best choice anyway. The tips flaked and broke off, drifting in microgravity where they could potentially harm an astronaut or equipment, and pencils are flammable, a quality NASA wanted to avoid in onboard objects after the Apollo 1 fire. That's right. Nothing flammable was allowed in space.
Right.
Because that's no bueno. In an oxygenated environment, you don't want something flammable in the vacuumous space, because then bad things happen. You do want flammable things on Earth, though. Paul C. Fisher and his company, the Fisher Pen Company, reportedly invested $1 million to create what is now commonly known as the Space Pen. None of this investment money came from the NASA's coffers. The agency only became involved after the pen was dreamed into existence. In 1965, Fisher patented a pen that could write upside down in frigid or roasting conditions down to minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit or up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and even underwater or in other liquids. If too hot, though, the ink turned green instead of its normal blue. This is pretty cool, actually. That same year, Fisher offered the AG-7 anti-gravity space pen to NASA. Because of the earlier mechanical pencil fiasco, NASA was hesitant, but after testing the space pen intensively, the agency decided to use it on space flights beginning in 1967. Unlike most ballpoint pens, Fisher's pen does not rely on gravity to get the ink flowing. The cartridge is instead pressurized with nitrogen at 35 pounds per square inch. This pressure pushes the ink towards the tungsten carbide ball at the pen's tip. I feel like a cartridge pressurized nitrogen might have the potential to be a problem since it's pressurized if you're changing altitude at the rate that astronauts do. But of course, what do I know? I'm not the expert. Like, wouldn't that be an issue, Polly?
Yeah.
Like, the reason why we have tunnels that go under mountains is because soda pop cans and chip bags explode if they go too high, too fast.
Do they?
That's what I thought. But now I'm not so sure.
I want to see a chip bag explode.
Now I'm just wondering if it's just simply because the straightest or the quickest way from A to B is a straight line. I mean, that would make sense too, but it would make more sense to dig out an entire mountain to go through all that effort because you don't want things to explode. What do I know? The ink, too, differs from that of other pens. Fisher used ink that stays a gel-like solid until the movement of the ballpoint turns it into a fluid. Pressurized nitrogen also prevents air from mixing with the ink so it cannot evaporate or oxidize. Well, isn't that cool? According to an Associated Press report from February 1968, NASA ordered 400 officious anti-gravity ballpoint pens for the Apollo program. A year later, the Soviet Union ordered 100 pens and 1,000 ink cartridges to use on their Soyuz space missions, said the United Press International. The AP later noted that both NASA and Soviet Space Agency received the same 40% discount for buying their pens in bulk. They both paid $2.39 back per pen instead of $3.98. All right, interesting. Are you intrigued, Polly?
I was, but you answered all the questions, so my intrigue was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was good. So
now we've learned so many things. And we've debunked one of those internet myths. Pat yourself on the back, Polly. Today was a successful day. More successful than the Challenger space mission.
Damn.
Damn. Ooh. Ooh.
I don't know. I think they learned a lot about them O-rings.
I think they did too. We learned today, kids, that you should never doubt your engineers.
Yeah, take the word of the people that built the thing. Fair enough.
I would have thought it would have been a no-brainer, but what do I know? I'm not an engineer. And I got a C in physics, so. And I'm super salty about it to this day. So, Polly, what are your articles?
Why did that happen?
Because my science teacher hated me.
Like, actually? How'd that result in the low grade?
So, okay. I'll tell a quick story about my physics teacher. So, the prevailing memory that I have of, was it junior year physics that I took? We were in the iPad program, which was a pilot program, and our professor, I think this was the last year that he actually taught a class. This man was never meant to be a teacher. He should not have ever been a teacher. I don't know why he had kids either, because there was a level of disdain that he held for anything that he was remotely responsible for the education of. Jesus. At least it came across that way. To give you an example of our working relationship while I was at school, he told me one day to go spontaneously combust.
Really?
Which is not something you hear from your secondary school teachers.
You wouldn't think so.
No, but this one was a special case, as I've already iterated to the people. But so I was in the last, one of the final classes that he taught at that school. Because after I left his class, he transitioned from a teacher role to a tech support role. So he would essentially have less interaction with students on a daily basis, and he would have more interaction with their tech on a daily basis. Because, like I said, we were transitioning into a more technological learning way of doing things. I was in the pilot iPad program. Soon after that, we went to Chromebooks in my district. And even when I came back to my school district, because that was the job that I had last year, at the end of this, the entire year, that was the job that I started in the help desk position. He was still there, and he was thriving in that position with less interaction with students. So I genuinely think it was an utter disdain for students, one, but me in particular. Because I don't recall him saying anything of equal disgust to anyone else.
So you weren't allowed to take makeup exams? How'd the grades come out of it?
It's really hard to be in a pilot program and do well, because it's a pilot program. So the teacher is still learning how to, or they're figuring out how they want to teach the class, and so they haven't kind of settled into a way that they want to teach it. And as a result, because they don't know what they're doing, the student picks up on that, not picks up on it, but it's reflected in the way that the students perform. Because it's so hodgepodge together. Because there wasn't a solid plan in place, I did not thrive.
Mm-hmm. Is that the only time that happened that you can?
Yeah. That was the only pilot program that I was ever involved in. And I'm like, no, after this year, never again. Not happening. If my kids ever get the opportunity to be put into a pilot program for anything, I'm just going to say no, because you don't want to be the test case for something new, which is why part of the reason why I refuse to take the vaccine until it's like in its 7th iteration, because I don't want to turn into a zombie or suddenly find out 10 years from now that I'm infertile. Like, not that there's a plethora of scientific evidence to support that, but there's not a plethora of scientific evidence to support anything to do with that. Literally, it's kind of like a ground zero situation that we're at. You never want to be the first to try anything. That's my philosophy. You want to be several generations removed from its origin. Because then you know that it's been crash tested for you.
So it was all high grades and then this C.
That in art class. Art class, and I've actually made a video about this. My freshman year art class, I got a C as well. But everything else was very good.
I want to hear about the art class low grade.
I don't understand why I got that grade either. Because it's art class, right? How do you get a C in art class? I even went back and I looked at my old grades when I was in the help desk coordinator position, and I couldn't figure it out. I was like, okay, why are these such shitty grades? The only thing I can think of is, like, maybe I forgot to turn in the syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and that tanked my grade, and I had the shittiest time bringing it up after that, because you did get graded based off of whether or not you had the syllabus signed by your parents. And if you brought it back to the teacher, and if it was late, you'd get 50% off your grade. And for a starting grade, that's not good. But like I said, I don't know why that would have affected my grade so horribly for the duration of the semester to the end of it. Because you can make up like 10 points. The 10 points that the syllabus is worth that you missed. I don't know. Art teachers are weird, I think. I think my teacher had a very narrow perspective of what he was looking for in an art class, which just boggles the mind. But yeah, those were my 2 worst classes in high school, is art and physics, and everything else, smooth sailing. I actually managed to pull off 112% in an AP class for my senior year. Like, my highest grade, I had 125% in that class for the longest time ever. And then my grades started falling because I kept getting 100%. And I went to my teacher and I'm like, can we just count nothing else for the rest of the year at all? Because I want to maintain this, please. She goes, why? You already have 100 plus. I'm like, but I want to be able to have this documented, all right? I want to show my children. Like, look, your mother got 125% in this class for a year straight. So you have no excuse.
And this never happened throughout college of this sort.
No.
All the grades were fine. Very high.
The worst. Well, okay. So there was another instance with another professor where I got a D in his class.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. It was data structures, actually. Still passed, but okay. There was a combination of things that went on with this. First off, I took the classes, in my opinion, in the wrong order. So you're supposed to take CS1 before you take any other computer science classes, and I did that. But another mandatory that you're supposed to take is called computational discrete mathematics. And same thing with data structures. You're supposed to take data structures, computational discrete mathematics. You can take them whenever you want. You just have to take them before you take any other classes after that. In my opinion, having taken both of those classes and reflecting on my education now, I should have taken discrete math before I took data structures, because that class would have helped me a lot with some of the logic in data structures. That was reason number one. Reason number two is this professor. Polly, you ever just have a professor that over encumbers you with slides?
Yes.
Full of information.
Mm-hmm.
And your duty as the student, in their eyes, is to memorize every single individual aspect of those slides and then be able to perform those aspects on a test.
Yeah, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Something close to that.
Yeah. And has your professor ever expected you to be able to perform those skills, but never provided you with any semblance of like alternate examples that he didn't do also with you, and then expect you to do completely new versions of those skills on the test, just at like on a whim? So like, okay, so pretend you have all of these slides, 8 bajillion. You have the 8 bajillion slides you have to memorize all these skills for, but you never get any practice with those skills. You only have the slides that he gives you and the examples that he does with you in class to work off of. And sourcing examples on the internet are a little bit of a struggle because he doesn't exactly pull a lot of alternate examples of the 8 million skills that he wants you to perfect. And as a result, the ability to practice is stunted by the overwhelming number of things that he's expecting of you. And so on the test, you've studied the slides. You know how to perform that specific skill on that specific problem. But any alternate conditions are kind of loosey-goosey. And then to add on to this, you email with the professor. He says he has office hours that he holds.
Right.
You email with the professor and you're like, okay, you're going to be in your office at this time, at this time, at this time. And you show up, and on 3 separate occasions, you show up to his office hours, having previously determined that he was going to be there at those times. And he does not show up to his office hours for like a solid 45 minutes.
That's bad.
And so you're like, oh, well, I don't literally have the time to sit here and wait around for him for the full amount of time that he's here for his office hours. So I'm just going to have to skip out because I have another class to get to at this time. Or I have work. Or I have volunteering. Or I have another professor that I have to meet that actually holds their office hours as expected. That was this professor. And he tested you on every single skill that he made you memorize too. And just, I had so many problems with this professor and the way that he taught and the way that he held his office hours and the way that he was just a professor. And I'm like, and it's not like he's the only professor I've had a problem with. He's the only professor that I had a problem with where my performance actually suffered. Because there was another professor that I had that I did have many problems with as well. Because he spent most of his entire class sessions waxing poetic about how he was going to be the next Nobel Peace Prize winner, and then speaking in his very thick and foreign accent about subject material that we had no idea what he was talking about because he had no way of explaining it to us in a way that made sense. So then we'd form study groups and we'd learn the material by ourselves. This was statistics, by the way. I aced statistics, and I did that on my own merits as a student, on my own practice as a student, with my own skills as a student. No help from this professor. None. So just sorry, I have like PTSD from this. Talking about the teachers that I absolutely disdain from my youth.
So that professor with the lower grade, the D, was that first year, second year, senior?
I was, I believe, a sophomore first semester. Mm-hmm.
Did that not repeat itself in your junior, senior years?
I did have to take a second class with that man, and this time I was more prepared, so I did better, but not as well as I wanted to. It was a C+, but, you know, what are you going to do? So I did do better, and I was more prepared, and I worked so much harder on this, and I held him to a higher account this next class that we had, because it was computer systems. So it was a little bit easier because it wasn't data structures, and I didn't have to use another class to rely, or it wouldn't have benefited me to have had a previous class on which to rely to perform in this class. It was just computer systems. It was all it was an entity all its own. And there was a textbook, so I could actually use the textbook to help myself learn. So it was easier, but it was still that guy's class. And he, on top of everything, the harshest grader ever.
For everyone.
Yes. Yes. Because he'd dock you points for getting the wrong answer, but he wouldn't give you any points for... Because it's computer science, right? It's math in some areas.
Okay.
You are performing calculations. You are performing certain skills. Along the way, typically, it's expected that professors would give partial points for if you performed a correct function here or there or whatnot on your way to the complete answer. But no, this professor was just all about if you got the wrong answer, the whole thing was wrong. Which, okay, it's fine, but that in combination with everything else, this guy was a hard ass. And my education was not improved for it, I think, personally.
Ever have the professors that just handed out grades like candy? Everyone got A's.
No, I've never had a professor like that.
No.
All of my grades were deserved in terms of so most of my grades were deserved, I guess, in terms of the standard that the teacher had set up for the class in their syllabus. Like, to the professor's credit, he did account for our grades in a very autistic way.
Mm-hmm.
So that if we wanted to disagree with him, and I did on a few occasions, I actually went and I checked his work. I'm like, the math here doesn't work. The math here doesn't add up. So I had a conversation with him and I got those points back. But yeah, it was in such a way that if you wanted to disagree with him, he had checks in place to secure the fact that he was justified in his grades, which is usually the case for all professors, but his was more stringent. Mm-hmm.
Coming up on the last few minutes here, Fullman asked, did you ever have any teachers where you got to do reviews of them at the end of the year?
Oh, every single teacher we did reviews for. That was the standard at my school.
How'd you review them?
Oh, I was very harsh on the teachers that I was dissatisfied with the teachings of.
Yeah.
I could... how I don't even know if I have the notes anymore, but I have written some scathing reviews. And I think the statistics professor that I wrote a review for, he did not teach after my semester with him. I'm pretty sure. It was either that or he left the year after. Because he was not there afterwards. So I don't think it was my contribution that got him kicked. I think it was a combination of everyone else's as well as mine. But I did not shy away from leaving reviews because they're all completely anonymous.
Sure.
Which is fantastic. So you can be as liberal with your scathing reviews as you want to be. And for those professors that I was not satisfied with, I definitely did not shy away from it. Because those are the things that help determine tenure for a professor. Those are the things that help determine pay, their status within the school, as well as their positions and what classes they teach, etc. Or what they need to work on. They use it just as much as the university uses it to help with their teachings.
Did you go any further than you needed to in those reviews, or just what had happened?
I went as far as I needed to get my point across.
Okay.
Like, are you asking me if I made anything up, or?
No, just you... Was it just what had happened that upset you, or that you thought was not correct? Or did you actually exaggerate some things?
Oh, God, no, I didn't exaggerate. I stuck strictly to the letter of what had transpired. My dad imposed in me at a very early age that honesty is the best policy. And so to this day, it is incredibly difficult for me to speak untruths. I feel very guilty about it. I have an overdeveloped complex of guilt.
Interesting. Marson asks, should a online review of a professor be able to lay the ban hammer on a professor?
You mean like rate my professor?
Yeah, that's a good example.
I don't know if it'd be useful in putting a ban hammer, like in terms of they can never teach again, or just I would use rate my professor just to figure out who it is that I want to take classes from versus not, because it's got a little bit more information than just this teacher sucks, don't take their class. It's this teacher is very lecture heavy, or this teacher is if you show up to class you'll pass type of thing, or make sure you bring your textbooks to class because this teacher is very textbook dependent in terms of their learning. Or they even have a hotness rating. Polly, did you know that?
Oh, yes.
My professor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that was included as a factor, but it is included as a factor that you can use to determine if you want to take that professor's class. But I don't think that should necessarily be used as the arbiter of who gets tenure versus who doesn't.
Not necessarily, huh?
Internally, I think the school should determine that.
Hotness?
Yeah, they should. Yeah, the school should determine hotness for professors internally. Duh. No, I think they should use it based off of the data that they collect at the end of the semester from students who actually took that class. And in a reliable setting, as opposed to on the internet, on a forum where people can just basically post whatever they want about a professor.
Yeah.
Polydub, 9 out of 10 teaching, 6 out of 10 hotness. Oof, are you gonna take that from Fatty? Platty?
Oh, far be it from me to debate Platty.
That's fair. Fatty. Why did I say that? I think I saw platypus and fat, and I combined the two. That's what I did. That was my brain. Weebo, what did the other teachers think of this bad teacher? These bad teachers.
Good question. Did you notice anything?
Yes, I did. In fact, so regarding the statistics professor that I had, I was discussing with the head of the department classes that I had taken in the psychology department, like the next year, and I don't know, somehow we got on the topic of like psychology classes that I loved and psychology classes that were just horrible, and I got on the subject of taking this statistics and behavioral sciences class with this professor, and she goes, "Oh," and she looked at me and she started thinking, she's like, "So can you tell me more about your experience with this professor?" Because like, remember, she was the head of the department. She goes, "Yeah,
Right.
So he also taught an intro to psychology class, and those are how we get a lot of the majors. I just kind of want to gauge kind of the impression that you got from taking his stats class, because I'm worried that his intro class kind of dissuaded a lot of students from picking up the major."
Fuck.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Mm-hmm. Which is a massive bummer, because the intro classes are super huge, and that's how you get a lot of recruitment is, hey, they take the intro class, get your feet wet a little bit. Hey, do you like the subject? Maybe you want to continue. My understanding was that the intro class didn't have a lot of carryover for any majors that year. So, yeah. Hammond Beans, is Weebo's Streamlabs broken, or does it take forever? I'm reloading it. And I see that there is a donation there. Thank you, Cult of Crow, for the donation. Just came into the stream. Don't have to read this out loud, but... Oh, I hope everyone had a great weekend, except the mass murdering pieces of shit at the FBI and ATF. I don't have a problem reading that out loud. Not a bit. Yeah, I did not expect this to turn into me hashing out my problems with academia, Polly. I'm actually quite enjoying this discussion. I feel like I'm being interviewed. Like, oh, Weebo, you just recently graduated. How was your experience?
I was curious about what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people want to screw their moms. Seg 101. That's not true, though. I mean, it's not true. I don't know about the statistical relevance of studies that have been done about that specific psychology, but we don't give... Oh, what's his name? Polly, help me out here. Freud. A lot of credence anymore.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Right?
I think so.
You think so? I think so too. Marson Johnson said, enrollment might have an impact on funding for the school, so there's politics involved with that. Well, it's not that they were no longer enrolled in the school. It's just that they didn't pick up psychology as a major, which I do believe has an impact in funding for that major, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Do you think, yes. Do you think that those professors caused a decrease in enrollment because of what they did, or just for that department?
I think it's potential that, well, at least the stats professor definitely did, because he was teaching an intro class. And if he taught it anything like our stats class, it would have definitely turned off any prospective psychology students that were on the fence about it. If they couldn't follow what was going on, and the professor was just talking nonstop about his own achievements in the field of psychology instead of the actual introductory material that he was supposed to be teaching them. I definitely think that affected enrollment on that aspect. Regarding the data structures professor in my computer science, on the computer science side of things, at least in my experience, I obviously went on to get my computer science degree But I actively avoided, when I could, taking this man's classes. So, for instance, he also taught the graphics classes. I didn't take any graphic classes for computer science as a result, because I did not want to put myself in another position where I would have to learn things from this man, because I knew for a fact that any class I took with him would drop my GPA, regardless of the efforts that I put into it. So that was a hard line for me that I did not cross. No matter how much I might have wanted to indulge in graphics, I didn't. So I spent my time working in things like artificial intelligence and, data mining, which were definitely not a waste of time. I had a great time studying those things. But now that I'm working with more graphical side of things in my current job, it probably would have been nice to know, because I haven't touched AI or data mining since college. But I am sure as fuck working in the graphics side of things. And it's like I'm learning something new all over again. Z-planes, X-planes, Y-planes. My senior project actually used components of graphic representation. As you remember, Polly, right? It's a game of castles, literally a card game. It uses graphics to actually perform the card game. So right. I started off my senior project at a disadvantage because I had no idea what the fuck I was going to do. I had no idea what graphics engine were available to me or how even to establish that or initiate that in my program. So yeah, like GUI design or physics, like game physics. Anything that has to do with rendering a scene on a computer.
Yeah, right.
That's from like movement to user interfaces, just anything that has to do with what the user is seeing that isn't a command line or a terminal output. That's what that is.
Did you ever take an intro course outside of your field with a professor that was so poor, as you're describing, made you would make you not want to continue in that field?
Yes. I wouldn't call it not the whole field, but the subject in particular, or any classes pertaining to this professor. My very first class, and this was not a class that I elected to take, it was one that I just happened to be put into. So the way that my school does things, or did things at the very least, was they put you in a seminar for your first class, and then from that, it was kind of your deep dive into the rest of the college experience. That professor would be your advisor until you picked your major. That professor would, and that seminar class would be like your home base. It was like kind of homeroom, but not really, because it was an actual class. You were actually learning things. But it was kind of your kickoff into the college experience. They taught you a lot about like writing the attempt was to teach you a lot about writing at a college level and speaking in the Socratic method at a college level and studying at a college level, et cetera, et cetera. It was meant to prep you, to get you kind of jumped into that. But I did not enjoy any aspect of this professor's class, because the name of the class was, specifically, the thing that we were studying was called Plagues in the Islamic World.
Okay.
And while that might seem like an interesting topic, it was not.
Why?
Because we have another case of a professor who likes to inflate their own self-importance in the subject rather than elevate the subject material in question. Like they're passionate about the work that they do, not just any work in the field that they're a part of. And it shows. And the difference is these are the type of professors that will recommend their own and their friends' textbooks as the things that you buy, instead of maybe a mind that is knowledgeable in the field that they admire, that they might not have ever met and they might not even know, but that they they've read and that they relate to, and that or not relate to, but that they feel has some sort of credence on the subject. So this is one of those professors that I didn't feel like I got a whole lot out of their class. And so it really turned me off to taking any other classes with them. And that was a large part of the history section of the university. Not that I was in danger of becoming a history major, but I would have probably taken more history classes if I knew that I wouldn't have to indulge in maybe that professor any more than I'd have to.
What year level was that course?
That was my very first class.
First
Freshman
class
year.
was Plagues in the Islamic World. Huh.
Yeah.
Kind of jumping back to the previous topic, Michael Trudell asked, what do you think about AI generally? And I know you've done some work in this area.
I think people overcomplicate what AI is, or they overestimate what it is that AI is capable of. Let's be very clear. An artificial intelligence algorithm is only going to be as smart as the people who program it. And it's only going to do the things that it's programmed to do. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Sometimes you have more than one person working on any individual code, and it's a lot of code.
Sure.
And so it's probable that any AI of significance is kind of a hodgepodge of like 60 people's different versions of code, and not any single one of them actually knows how the code works in its entirety.
Okay.
So what that means is that artificial intelligence is limited, and probably will remain limited in its scope, unless you can get the mega mind out there somewhere to maintain this massive algorithm of code that does the things that it is that you want the code to do on every level that it's expected to do them, and improve it as it is called for. So I don't think we're ever going to get Skynet, is my conclusion that I'm drawing here. I think we're safe.
You said overstated in its capacity or its application, or in what ways?
In its capacity. What you need is an AI that can maintain an AI. That would require the AI to actually know how the code works, which would require someone else to know how the code works, so it could program the AI's algorithm to maintain another AI's algorithm. And you're asking a lot. You are asking so much. Because, Paul, you know how the human brain works, right? Memory, storage capacity, rather limited and unreliable. Yes?
Sure.
Now, consider how much code there is in any individual AI program. Like if you wanted to do something very simple, like solve a maze by itself, very simple, but it's going to be limited to exactly that one task. You want an AI that can do multiple different tasks all at the same time. And you want it to be able to do any complicated version of that task. And you want it to be able to learn with every iteration that it runs itself. That is several hundred different things that you are asking the code to keep track of. And in turn, the coder to be able to keep track of when it's programming things to maintain. So you could spend oodles amount of time learning the algorithm, and then you could spend oodles amount of time updating the algorithm. But then say you retire one day, someone's got to take your place. Then they have to spend as many oodles of time learning and maintaining the algorithm, and then updating that algorithm. Or maybe training other people to do exactly what it is that they need to do as well. And then say they want to roll out an update. They then have to document that update and all of the code that goes with it, and then learn the thing to other coders that are in charge of maintaining this algorithm. And it's a whole bunch of communication and remembering things that is probably not going to work out all that well, because people are notoriously shitty at remembering things, and they suck at communicating with people. That's just fact. So there's always going to be a human element involved, and it's always going to be super unreliable, and that's the reason that AI would never be feasible on a grand scale that we expect it to be, like in the sense of Skynet.
So the growth and expansion of the AI in terms of the algorithm would have to be done and done by humans, and therefore the limitation.
For the most part. Yes. Now, that's assuming what I know about artificial intelligence is the scope of all things artificial intelligence has to offer for all of time.
Well, you got into it in post-secondary education, did you not? You did. You did a bunch of AI work, right?
I did, yes. Very, very, very limited scope, single task algorithms. And they were complicated for what they were. Someone eventually will write an AI that can maintain itself. Perhaps. But I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. And I don't think, here's the other thing with the test of AI. Artificial intelligence, at its heart, the intention behind it is to be able to fool a human into thinking that it's actually a human that they're interacting with. Correct?
Yes. Yeah.
That's like the ultimate litmus test for if you have a decent AI.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, no one can really agree on how an AI would go about passing the test, but that would be the thing that the AI would have to pass in order to qualify as wholly AI. Because at present, we do not have anything that is like human intelligence replicatable.
Do you think that a test other than, can you fool a human being? Could the AI fool a human being into thinking that it's in fact another human being that it's speaking to? The Turing test. Do you believe that there is another better test? Do you think there are any inherent flaws in using the Turing test as the test for AI?
I have to go back into my AI education and remember what the Turing test was. It's
what you described in for our purposes here. Yeah, it's kind of it's what you described. Yeah, fooling a human being into thinking.
Well, because like we talked about different ways that you could fool a human being in AI when we talked about it. And
interesting.
Now I'm like having some trouble remembering exactly which one they specifically mentioned as the Turing test.
Well, let me put it this way. Do you think that being able to fool a human being into thinking you're talking to an AI is a legitimate means of testing for, quote, true AI, regardless of its name, regardless of the name of the test?
I think it has some validity, but I don't think it's the end-all be-all of determining if it's a successful AI. Because
what do you think? Okay, go ahead.
I don't think that we have a consensus on what AI actually means, artificial intelligence. Because at a very basic definition, it could be something that learns, like an algorithm that learns but doesn't necessarily remember how to do a thing or how to do it better, or comes up with solutions to do a thing better than it previously would have. Or yeah, okay. So one of the AI algorithms that I coded was a maze solver And part of the thing that made that AI wasn't like that it could convince me that it was human. Part of the thing that made it AI was that it learned with each pass how to solve the maze better.
Okay.
And that, by definition, is technically artificial intelligence. So it wouldn't have passed the Turing test and be true AI in terms of the definition that we're talking about regarding how you would pass the Turing test. But technically, it is artificial intelligence at a very basic level in that it could learn, but it can only learn on that one task, solving a maze. Does that make it intelligent? I don't think so. Like I said, a program is only as smart as the person who programs it. Wait, did I just say that I'm not intelligent? That's not what I meant. It's only as smart as the person programming it intends it to be. So my intention was only that it solved a maze. So it only solves mazes, and it only, does it in a limited capacity. It will only do it for this one individual instance if you're submitting the specific text file of maze contents. And that's it. See, now we're getting into a really philosophical argument about AI. And we don't have enough time for it.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. So, Polly.
Yes.
We have like 4 minutes until we're at exactly 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
Shall we close it out? Leave it open to comments? What would you like to do?
Either or. I mean, if there's any particular comments, a bunch of good questions coming out of chat.
Mm-hmm. So if anyone's got any last minute comments that they want to put in the chat, feel free to include them in the chat. We will read them before we close out, most likely. But in the meantime, Polly, do you have anything that you wish to shill to the audience?
Just my channel, and you can find that stuff in the description.
Yes, I did post it there. It is there. Yes. Remember, guys, all of his stuff is in the description. His Potato Peripherals Fund is in the description if you feel so inclined to donate to him at any point in time, before, after, during the show. I don't care. Do what you want. If you want to subscribe to him, that's also there. If you want to follow him on Twitter, I'm pretty sure I also put that in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but you probably shouldn't do either of those things.
What? You don't
Weebo,
want
I hear you're working on a
Twitter?
video right now. How's that going?
Oh, I am actually.
Yep.
I am working on a video discussing Damon Young's most recent contribution to the internet. And, well,
it looks like you're having fun
seen
doing
that.
it.
It is a good time. In terms of like, it makes me hate everything a lot more, but also it's good content. It's good like dive board content, because I need that kick in the butt to get me to do the thing. I just need to do it. I just need to make content, Polly.
But you look like you're having fun with this particular content. You don't need that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Look at that big smile. Yeah, someone's having fun.
Oh, because I get to be super snarky, and I have no qualms about doing it either. Not with Damon. Never with Damon. He's a special place in my hate boner. I mean heart.
Dan Fulman asks, how did the kittens respond to Strangers in the House? Your dinner party?
Oh, they didn't mind at all.
No?
Valentine was the one that was out. She was just kind of chilling underneath the wardrobe the whole time, because that's where she likes to hang out all the time when she's not begging me for attention. Meowschwitz was actually relegated to this room because she just had her lady bits taken away from her.
And as a follow-up, what was on the dinner party menu? I'm curious myself.
So we had Gouda mashed potatoes, which I couldn't eat, obviously. We had Parmesan roasted zucchini and cauliflower roasted with Parmesan and lemon juice, or tossed with Parmesan and lemon juice. And then we had seared steaks.
Seared on what? Did you grill outdoors? Warm enough?
No, I used my skillet because I have one of those, and I love to use it.
Sweet.
It's one of those cast iron skillets.
So you're one of those people for dry rubs on steaks? You like marinades? What's the deal?
So actually, I find that the best way to sear a steak is just to salt and pepper that stuff with freshly ground salt and pepper, and just kind of sprinkle it on either side, and then just put some olive oil in the pan, blast it on high, and then throw that steak in when the pan is nice and hot. And that's how you sear a steak properly. And it is excellent. But of course, you have to have a decent cut. That makes all the difference. If you're just getting a shitty steak from like the Walmart, don't even bother. Wrap that shit in bacon, throw it on a grill, and slather it in barbecue sauce, because that's about as good as you're going to get it. But if it's a good cut of meat, you don't need anything more than salt, pepper, and a nice skillet.
Salt, pepper, and a nice skillet. Let the steak come through. Do you know what particular cut it was? T-bone.
I believe it was a strip steak. I actually have it on my phone. So give me a sec. So they were each 5 ounces. So not the biggest cut, but were they good? Oh god, my nose, my nose, my nose, my nose. Ah! No, they were just bistro steaks. Regular old, but they were grass-fed, which is also very important. You want that good shit. Thank you to the next 6 minutes who donated to say, enduring the Lenten season as well as one can present. I hope your effort is getting better. It's a challenge. You get this. You got this, though. Anyhow, Weebo is quite intelligent and also quite the content creator. Sub to her channel and check out her sweet merch. Yes. And then also, thank you, Lucian, for the donation over on the Streamlabs. I highly recommend Traveling Salesman 2012. And then Lucian linked me an IMDb page with that information. So I will check that out after the stream here. Polly, did you check your Streamlabs before we hop off?
Yeah, looking at my Streamlabs. Thank you, next 6 minutes. I was just about to read. Another invite to the Sober Stream with 6 tendered to you, my good sir. We go live tomorrow evening. Well, thank you, 6. The last time he sent me an invite, I just wasn't home at the time, but I'm looking forward to it. Next 6 minutes does good content. You can make it over to his channel, and you should check it out. It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this fine evening. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversations that we had as much as I did. Polly, did you enjoy yourself?
I did.
Oh, excellent. Good talk. Good talk. So, we'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place, same otter, same face. Until then, have a good rest of your week.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.